Hey, Jay,
Yes,
is your net worth goal $10 million?
it wasn't. But after talking to Dom on today's podcast episode, I have to admit he made a good case for it.
Right?
The career wisdom that he shared and the conversations that we had are just awesome from a career hacking perspective. I can't wait to share this story with everybody. I think we're going to get a lot out of it.
Totes my goats.
We'll explain to you how Dom turned his income from regular person salary to bringing in $50,000 per month at the age of 31. Oh, and how he made it to the C-suite by the age of 31. Yeah, the C-suite. He's pretty badass.
One would say it's sweet.
Oh, good one.
He's got a sweet story.
Yes, he does.
Welcome to Fire Drill Podcast, where side hustles, savings, and creativity lead to financial independence. With your hosts, Gwen from Fiery Millennials and Jay from Millennial Boss.
Hey, everybody. We have Dom from GenY Finance Guy. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys.
So are we. And Gwen is here too.
Hello, hello, hello.
So before we get started, I have a quick update. I am recording this from my new standing desk, and it's a game changer. It's a game changer.
Yay!
But it also means I'm kind of like dancing around right now a little bit versus in my seat, but my posture is so much better. But for anyone who doesn't know, I was trying to get a standing desk for weeks, and finally my husband just made one for me, and it's so much cheaper. It uses like steel pipes and a block of wood.
So I should probably stop hunching over my desk then.
No, you probably should not. Although I did that for the first 50-something episodes. So I'm improving my posture right now. It's great.
Awesome.
I have plans to convert the closet into a standing podcast closet. Right now it's a sitting podcast closet.
Yes. I keep forgetting that you're in the closet there.
Well, I'm definitely out of the closet now. No, I am sitting at my desk. I decided to stop podcasting from the closet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
From this closet. When I move up to Minneapolis, I'm definitely going to podcast from the closet, but this one was a bit claustrophobic for me.
Very nice. All right. So we're giving everyone the landscape of where we are right now. Dom, let's have you start by telling everyone just a quick bio about yourself.
Well, like you mentioned in the intro, I blog at GenY Finance Guy. I'm 31, recently made the C-suite for the company I work for. And I have a net worth goal of $10 million and a monthly income of $50,000 a month. And my whole goal is to be a beacon of hope, motivation, and inspiration by living a life by example.
Wow, that was perfect. And you hit all the things that I wanted to talk about, because typically we have guests that are more on the frugal side and their goals are a lot smaller than that. So 10 million, that's crazy. Why?
Well, why not?
That's a good question.
Well, I think the big reason why is, or I guess there's two reasons. One is everyone's going for $1 million. At least, most of the people I come across in the blogosphere and even in real life. But $1 million isn't as much as it used to be. But the bigger reason or the bigger drive behind it is I have an ambition to make my world so big that everyone inside of it can have anything and everything they want. And, money is never an issue to contemplate.
I love that. So, confession to make, when I started following your blog a few years ago, that was in my income increasing phase where I kept getting promoted every 6 months, and you were increasing your income and I was increasing my income at the same time. But with that last promotion you got to the C-suite, I mean, boom, I was done. I was dead in the competition, in the fake competition in my head that I never told you about. That's so impressive and crazy. So how do you get to the C-suite when you're 31?
Well, hold on. You're not throwing in the towel yet, right?
No, I'm not. Yeah, maybe we'll be podcast millionaires or something, Gwen. But we need a sponsor first. Let's work on that.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
How old are you, Jay?
I will be 29 next month. By the time this goes live, I'll be 29.
Okay. Well, you've got a year and a half. I didn't make it exactly 30. I was 30 in 6 months. So
that's true.
You've got time to make it.
That's very true. Okay. Challenge accepted. Let's go.
All right. Sorry. So what was the question?
So basically, let's give everybody a how. How does somebody in their 20s, when you started this game, go from where you started, and tell everyone where you started, to making $50,000 a month? How is that even possible?
Well, I started like everyone, naked and screaming out of the womb. That's probably a good starting point. But we can fast forward, the elementary school, middle school, that kind of stuff. I did grow up on welfare. So I kind of had, nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I didn't want to grow up and end up like my parents did. So, I think you have two options in life. You can choose to be the victim or the victor. And I definitely chose to be the victor. I looked for people outside of my circle of influence to live vicariously through, to motivate and inspire myself. These people that weren't in my own circle of influence act as my beacon of hope and motivation and inspiration, which is kind of the role that I try to play online as well. And when I finally got out of college and started working, I realized early on that if I was willing to live my life like most won't for a couple of years, maybe it actually turned out to be about a decade, working 70 plus hours a week, and whether that was in the job or working on my skill set, something in my personal or professional development, that I could outwork the most innately talented people. Because the reality is most people are lazy. And if you want an edge in this life, just do what most people aren't willing to do. And success is pretty inevitable. And that level of success is really up to you.
It's totally true. I outworked everybody in high school and it paid off in spades for getting a full ride scholarship. And then I also outworked people in college, which helped me get my first full-time job after college as well.
And to give people some perspective on the hustle of this group. So Gwen, you have obviously your job, you have this podcast, you have a blog, you have other things. Dom, you have a bunch of stuff going on too. And you just told us that you wake up at 3 a.m. every morning. So what's going on with that?
Well, I allow myself 4 hours of sleep on Sundays. And no, you're right. I wake up at 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. most days of the week. And why? Because you're right. I mean, I have a lot of things going on. First, I would say I think everyone should have a side hustle, because you never know when that side hustle might turn into a main hustle, or when that side hustle might actually help you increase the income and the potential from your main hustle. And for me, that, my main hustle it happens to be my day job. I didn't know that's the direction it was going to go, but it was definitely directionally correct. So what do? I run a blog, GenY Finance Guy. I get a lot of my writing done in the mornings when no one else is awake, no one else can bother me. I also run all of our household investments, and that takes time and research. I try to get a lot of reading done in the mornings as well. That's why I wake up so early. And I don't know, what else do I have going on? I mean, I think I've really actually tried to focus and narrow things down. I used to have a lot more things going on, but now it's really my side hustle being the blog and my main hustle being my day job, wearing the C hat, trying to continue to just develop my career and try to milk it for as much as it's worth. And I don't mean to use milk it in a derogatory way. I just mean to try to add as much value as possible so I can extract as much income through the fruits of my own labor.
So let's talk about this. So you were rising through the ranks in your late 20s, and then something happened where you got catapulted to the C-suite. And I remember you posted some sort of like email that you sent or whatever. So can you tell us exactly how? Because most people listening, they probably don't believe that someone who's 31 could be in the C-suite.
How did it happen? Well, so I should start by saying the company that I work for now, I thought it was just going to be a resume gap filler. My wife and I had just bought a house, and it was about an hour inland from Orange County. That's where I was living at the time when I took the job where I'm at now. And I got in there and I'd actually been working there for about a year and a half and still wasn't sure if it was going to be right for me long term. But then I saw an opportunity kind of open up, and I started working directly with the CEO, and he sent me an email one day. And at the time I was actually entertaining job offers I was going to leave the company. I didn't use that as leverage per se. But what happened is he sent me an email on some things I've been working on with him. And I'm going to paraphrase this, but he said, you're contributing at a director level. I want you to think about what you could do longer term for the company, what you'd want your position to be. And so then I saw that as an opportunity. I was like, well, wait, maybe I don't need to jump ship. Maybe there is opportunity here, because the company was growing. I mean, they had an incredible growth story. They'd grown at 25% compounded for almost 20 straight years by that time. And it had the original CEO and founder still in place. And here now I have a direct line to him, and he's saying, hey, I'm giving you an opportunity. I think you're contributing at a director level. Ball's in your court. And so I took that. I sat on it overnight. The next morning, I drafted up an email back to him. And I said, I'm happy, this email came to me, because I was starting to think that, maybe this place wasn't the right fit for me long term with the goals that I have for my own career development and advancement. I said, I'm kind of tired of this being all stick and no carrot. And if you and I could talk some more, I'd love to kind of explore what you had in mind versus, kind of my vision for my own career. And then I jumped in the shower because I didn't want to face a reply right away. I knew I was taking a risk. I also knew that, I had another job offer waiting if this didn't work out, if I made the wrong call and was maybe a little too bold and, in calling the CEO out saying, okay, well, now it's time for you to act. I threw the ball back in his court. So I got out of the shower and I immediately checked my phone and I had 2 missed calls and a voicemail from the CEO. And he's like, he leaves me a message and he goes, hey, I just read your email twice. Call me as soon as you can. And so I called him back and I'm getting to the punchline here. He said, first off, if you start circulating your resume, I will take my 9mm to the back of your head. And then he kind of laughed. It was kind of scary when he said that, but he meant well. And then from there, he goes, my first 2 questions for you are, how much do you think you're worth? And what do you want to do? And right there on the phone, between that email and that phone call, I increased my income $60,000 and got promoted to director. And then from there, 18 months later, after working with him very closely and getting heavily involved in many aspects of the business, beyond just finance, which is kind of my background or, where my schooling is from college. And, then I make the C-suite.
So in my day job, I work with the executives. I provide all their IT support. By the way, do you have something like that at your place?
We do. Actually,
Nice.
IT reports into me.
Nice. Okay. So I know that the average age of the people that I support on the officers list is about 55. There's a few old guys who skew it, but the youngest I think on that list is probably early 40s. So my question for you is, I work for a Fortune 100 very established company. What happens if you're trying for a promotion and somebody says to you, you're not old enough? You could do the job, but you're not old enough. So you need to season and wait your turn. What do you say to that?
I'd call bullshit. And it might be true, and sorry, excuse my language, but it might be true in certain companies and definitely probably at the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 level. But then I would encourage people to go somewhere else where the top brass values gray matter over gray hair. I think that is a strategic advantage that the leadership team at the company I work for has, especially, the fact that the original CEO and founder, who's 60 today, is not afraid to put young people in senior level positions as long as they have the ability to get the job done. And to give you a little flavor for that, if you look at the C-suite composition of the company that I work for, I am the youngest one at 31 right now, but the next 2 guys up from me, they're 39. So, there's less than a decade apart between me and 2 other guys on the senior management team. And then if you go up from there, you got 2 other guys that are in their mid 40s. The CEO is the oldest at 60.
I think I can speak to it from a Fortune 100 perspective as well. So not the C-suite, but when I was 25, I got a management position, first level. And then when I was 20, maybe either 26 or 27, I don't remember, but I got 2 director offers and I would masquerade as older than I actually was. So I remember one of the directors, he loved working with me and I loved working with him. And we did some great stuff together. Because the big thing is you have to add value first. You can't just be a millennial and be like, I want everything handed to me when you don't do anything. Like you literally have to do something. You have to be performing at the level that you want to be at. And then, I think his team or something like told him I was doing well too. So he's like, oh, why don't you come and you can be the director for me? And I think I told him flat out, I want to be the director for you. But then I sent him my resume and he was like, let's actually chat. I realize I don't know that much about you, which really meant like, oh my God, you're 26. I had no idea. And part of the reason is like I would just dress older and I'd act older. And I mean, it actually cut off a lot of opportunities for me to make friends with people my own age there, which was a bummer. And no one ever wanted to invite me like, oh, we're all going to a concert. We're all doing this. Like, oh, we probably shouldn't invite our boss who is, even though she's our age or younger, like it just wouldn't be a good look. So it was a little bit alienating. But yeah, I mean, that's how you do it. I mean, you have to be bold. You have to tell people what you want and you have to produce.
I think the linchpin to what you just said is it's about how much value you add. And yeah, there's always going to be maybe biases towards age. But if you get in there and produce and deliver an incredible amount of value, it's really going to be hard for people to ignore you. I forget who the author is, but he says, be so good that they can't ignore you.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I mean, if you go to a smaller company, you may have more access to the C-suite. Because even if I had stayed at that company, I would have been 18 promotions later to even get that high. So that's cool.
There are probably about 8 or 9 steps before I would even have a chance to work with a director. in my current position at my current level. So I think if you want to do that rapid growth, move up and get the good titles, then you need to start at a smaller company where things are more flexible and not as entrenched, because they're very much like you must spend 18 months in your role. You can't get out early and you can't skip grades. Like that's it. That you go from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 and you spend 18 months at each of those. And that's at least the amount of time that you need to spend in that.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Like you need to have someone above you who doesn't hold those thoughts and thinks more of you. Because to say, oh, well, this person needs 18 months to season, that's a little short-sighted if you have a strong person. And I had an AVP who had my back and supported me and would put me up for opportunities and things like that, who clearly didn't have that bias. So I think you can't go it alone. I don't know. Dom, did you go it alone?
Well, I think I should first specify when I called BS, I didn't mean it was BS overall. I mean, it does matter what circumstance or what environment you're in. And I've worked in both public and private companies, big and large companies. And I would agree that the smaller private companies offer a lot more opportunity than the big public companies. Because by the time you make the Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 list, I mean, there's so many levels of bureaucracy that had to be put in place to be able to scale to that size of an organization that they have no option but to kind of create all these rules. Where when you go into a smaller company, like right now, the company I joined, they were doing 50 million a year in revenue when I started. We finished this last year about 130 million, but we're still small enough, and I think we'll still be able to maintain that level of meritocracy versus bureaucracy, probably at least until we get to about a $500 million company. And did I go it alone? Sorry, Jay, I didn't answer that question. No, I don't think you ever go it alone. I've been fortunate to have mentors and people that have looked out for me along the way. And sometimes it hasn't always been internally. I mean, sometimes I've gotten advice from mentors and old bosses from other companies that looked out for me, but then were still giving me advice. But I also always tried to partner with the key players. And, there's Zig Ziglar has a quote that if you help enough people get what they want, you'll always get what you want. I mean, there's kind of this universal law of reciprocity. And so, I think that's a key thing too, right? If you go help a lot of people make their lives and make their jobs easier, they're going to have no choice, whether they know it or not. It might be subconscious, but to help you out in the end.
I definitely agree with that. I scratch your back, you scratch mine.
Yep.
So in terms of the value that you were adding, just to kind of give people a landscape of what is like, you shouldn't ask for this, I didn't provide enough value, to like, oh, I'm providing tons of value, I should be getting more. And would you recommend that they get it in their current position or that they propose a new position?
It really comes down to having this keen sense of self-awareness and knowing, what you're good at. I mean, you might be very good at your job and you may not need to move positions to necessarily increase your income as long as your position still has the capacity for you to continue to increase the level of value that you deliver in an organization. So I think it's very situational. It's hard to answer that question, Jay.
It is hard. And, now that we're talking about this, it's interesting because I completely switched my goals. So I was someone that was moving up the food chain in my company, and I had a great situation, and then decided, you know what, I want to go work in the heart of technology and move to Silicon Valley and be an IC again. And of course, you're working there, so you get paid well. So it wasn't like a huge income setback at all. But now I don't know if I want to build up the ranks in technology. Like, I don't know if I want to be a manager of managers. I kind of like working on my projects and having time to do my entrepreneurial stuff. So it's different now.
Yeah, and I think it's, as an individual, you're the one that has to make that call, and I think that's why it's also so situational, because it's not just what is your own ambition, but over time as you mature and evolve, that ambition matures and evolves with you. So I just don't think we would do the listeners justice if we just said this is the one universal law or rule of thumb to follow.
Exactly, and I think a lot of people want to be managers because they want the power, but they don't want to lead. And being a manager is incredibly hard. It's something I did for 2.5 years. And there are so many good times and there's so many bad times. But I think a lot of people, they just force themselves into a role like that because they want the power or the money. And they're horrible managers because they don't care. I mean, you need to care about your people almost like they're your children or something in some ways. I mean, you spend a lot of time together. You're responsible for their well-being at work, the money that they make, the opportunities they get. So it's a huge responsibility. I think a lot of people jump too quickly into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Agreed. I even have a hard time now kind of transitioning, because like you, I've always enjoyed working on the projects and kind of being in the trenches. And what I've found is I've gotten to a point where if I want to continue to grow professionally, I have to do less and less of the stuff that I love. It doesn't mean I'm not going to completely disconnect, because the other thing about working in a smaller company is you kind of have to be a working manager. You can't just be a manager of people or a manager of other managers, because there's just so much to get done especially when you're growing at 25% a year, that, everyone kind of has to wear multiple hats. And every once in a while, even the top brass have to jump in, roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to think of the last time that any one of the people I support dove in and actually worked on something. And I'm coming up blank. I mean, they do tons of work, but it's all directing other people and they're the generals that are organizing their troops. They're not the troops doing the work. Yeah,
see, that would be my cue to exit, exit stage left and find the next opportunity. The thing I love about the company I'm at right now is even our CEO. He is so hands-on. Actually, he's probably sometimes a little too hands-on. Because if we're going to want to go from $140 million company to 500 million in the next 5 years, he's going to have to start to step back. But it's also the thing that everyone in the company loves about him, because he just jumps in and he's working in the trenches with everyone.
Yeah. Although I will say that my best manager was very hands-off, and one of the reasons I was able to be so successful is because he didn't try to tell me what to do or teach me what to do or influence what I was doing.
Yeah.
So it let someone who was 26 kind of create their own path and figure stuff out. And I learned so much faster that way. And he was there for guidance and to tell me oh, you're going in the wrong direction, you're going in the right direction, don't forget to do this. But yeah, I don't like when someone's too in my workspace. Actually, that's that's my allergy. If a manager's up in my grill, it's the worst.
Yeah, and I think
Totally.
For anyone to succeed, I think the three elements that everyone needs is one, autonomy, one, some level of feeling that they have some level of contribution, and then the space to have mastery in what they do.
So let's switch to money from the career conversation.
Sure.
So you have posted that you were aiming for a 50% savings rate. Is that right, last year? And how does that work with you guys?
Yeah. So, we kind of created this, law of 50-50, as I've coined it, where our goal, we didn't hit it quite last year. We were close, but is to save 50% of our after-tax income and spend the other 50% guilt-free. It kind of goes against kind of the conventional personal finance wisdom, fending off lifestyle inflation. The rule that we live by allows lifestyle inflation. And instead of practicing extreme frugality, I practice relative frugality. So I'd rather make $400,000 a year after tax and be able to spend $200 and invest the other $200 than make $40,000 a year after tax and only be able to spend $20 and invest $20.
I mean, I'd rather do that too, but not at the point where I'm earning that much money.
So how are you deciding when you get this $50,000 a month income? And I'm assuming that's between you and your wife, not just you?
Correct.
So where are you deciding to put it?
Definitely not under the mattress. Although sometimes on the blog it may appear so, because I build up large amounts of cash before I deploy things or deploy the soldiers to war. But where am I putting it to work? Well, as I build up the armies, and then I find things that I get very interested and convicted to deploying money into. So, for example, the few things that I've been most interested these last 12 to 18 months is I'm investing in hard money loans through Csuite. So those are real estate backed loans. I'm investing what I consider to be the safest part of the capital stack, because debt has, a preferred return nature, meaning that if there is a case of loss, the debt holders are going to get paid back before the equity holders. And the thing I like about Csuite is, or at least the loans that I'm investing in, is they have a, on average 65% loan to value, meaning there's a 35% equity cushion before a dollar of my money is ever at risk. And I'm earning 7 to 8% interest while I wait. And most of those loans, they get paid off in 4 to 10 months. So that's one area. Another area that is probably a lot less popular and not talked about much is a product called life settlements. And so it's a secondary market where the mostly elderly people that are sick can sell their life insurance policies and get way more money than what the insurance company would give them based on the cash surrender value. And I'm talking like 3 to 4 times more. So it's kind of a win-win where investors can invest in these policies and they become the beneficiary once, the elderly that are sick, pass away. It's a win for the insured because they're in a couple different spots. They either no longer need the policy because their beneficiaries have since passed, or they need the money for living expenses or to cover health costs, Or the third option is they can't afford the policy anymore. So they were going to let it lapse and only get the small amount of cash value that the insurance company would give them. So like on a $5 million policy, that might be $150,000 after they've paid hundreds and thousands of dollars in insurance premiums.
Wait, hold on. Sorry. We need to start at the beginning with this last one because I have never heard of this and I have no idea what you're talking about. How do you fit into this piece? I'm
an investor.
You're an investor. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll back up with a simple example. Let's say you have, we'll just call him John Doe, because I don't know the names of any of the people that I'm invested in. He has a policy for $5 million. He's 82 and he has a laundry list of health issues. His wife has since passed. She was the only beneficiary. He had no kids, so he no longer needs the policy. But he's sick, and he would rather have some of the money now to enjoy during the last few years of his life, and so he can go to the insurance company and see what the cash value is. And on a $5 million policy, let's just say it's $150,000. So the insurance company says, hey, we'll give you $150,000 if you surrender your policy. And that way the insurance company avoids having to pay out the $5 million face value when he passes to whoever he might have renamed the beneficiary to. Or alternatively, he can go to the secondary market and sell his policy, and that becomes what's known as a life settlement to a pool of investors. And so you, as an investor, you can buy a fractional share in this policy, and he can get anywhere from 3 to 4 times that $150,000. So now you're talking, $450,000 to $600,000, which is, way more than the insurance company was going to give him. And he was just going to let it lapse. And in return for that cash, now the investors become, through a trust, the beneficiaries of this policy. So when he does pass, they get their pro rata share of the $5 million proceeds.
This is like, whoa. This is the first I've heard of it as well. Wow.
So how do you even invest in this? Is there an online platform?
I'm investing through a company is actually right now only available to residents in California, called Reliance Shares. And, at any given time, they have 7 to 10 policies that are available. And the historical return of this asset class is 12 to 14% with zero correlation to other financial markets. To give, like an extra vote of, kind of confidence in going into this asset class, Warren Buffett himself invests almost $400 million a year in this asset class. And the reason you've probably never heard of it is because until, this whole revolution in fintech, it was really only available to the extremely wealthy and even institutional money. But now, with technology, the barrier due to cost and stuff has really come down. So now it opens it up to a lot more investors with, minimum investment of $10,000 per policy versus, back in the day, you might have had to invest $100,000, $500,000 per policy.
So Dom, this is why we have you on here today, because Gwen and I are all about diversity in thought, and we don't want to approach financial independence as a one-way, one-size-fits-all thing. So this is new stuff that is new to us, probably new to a lot of our listeners. So thank you for sharing with us. Question for you. What do you do with any other money that you have? Are you looking into like individual stock investing, or do you do index funds? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so I have a bit of a character flaw that I'm trying to work on. And I'm only going to mention one. I probably have plenty others. You'd have to talk to my wife to figure out what those are. But the one that I'm trying to fix is, so I also have a background in trading. I used to trade for an energy company. And for the longest time, I had a hard time keeping my money in my 401k invested. I thought I was a smarty pants and I could invest and time the market, in and out. And in doing so over the last 5 years, I've probably left at least $150,000 on the table because I've probably averaged 50% cash in multiple retirement accounts, because since I've worked at different places, I've rolled them over into different, rollover IRAs and then my current 401k. But recently on the blog, I talked about how I'm going to correct that character flaw, because my background as a trader is really in the realm of options and trading options against stocks. But in a 401k, I don't have that ability. So the edge that I think I have doesn't exist in my 401k. So to answer your question, in that, I just recently started to invest in index funds. It's just taking advantage of dollar cost averaging. And I realized that on that money, I have a 3-decade plus time horizon before I need to access it. And so I need to start treating it that way. I set my 401k contributions to front load. So I'll be maxed out by the second week in March, and that money will automatically get invested. I had a pretty big dollar amount sitting in my 401k, about $100K that was uninvested. So I put, 25,000 of that to work when we had that recent 10, 12% correction, whatever it ended up being. I got close to the lows, but not quite at the lows. And then I've set a reminder to invest $5,000 a month on top of whatever the automatic contributions that are getting invested every month through my regular deferral from my paycheck, to invest $5,000 a month on the second Wednesday of every month until the rest of the cash is invested. And then the last piece that I'll mention is for my rollover IRAs. Those, in order to correct my character flaw earlier on before I was ready to do just this index investing in my 401k, I transferred about $80,000 to a self-directed IRA, which is what makes up a big portion of the money that I'm investing through Csuite, which I mentioned earlier.
Oh, okay. We've talked about self-directed IRAs so that people can get into real estate themselves, but not necessarily into something like Csuite. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Does it have a minimum?
Csuite, their minimum investment's $1,000. But if you invest at least $25,000, they'll pay the first year's fees in setting up your self-directed IRA, which is like, $250 to set up, and then it's $150 a year to maintain in order to kind of invest in these alternative asset classes.
What kind of nerves did you have to get over regarding Csuite? Like, what are the downsides?
What are the downsides? Well, I mean, they're a new company. They've only been open to the public, I think, since 2012 or 2013. They haven't lived through a financial crisis like we had in 2008, 2009. But they do have contingency plans in place. If they were to become insolvent, there's actually a separate entity that holds the investments. And if that second company were to go bankrupt or become insolvent, they pay insurance every month. So there would be a third party that would come in and essentially administer the remaining loans to make sure that the investors are getting paid on their investments until those loans are paid back. Other risks, I mean, you don't necessarily, the way that it's structured, you don't have direct claim on the real estate. It's more of a note. So you got to kind of have trust that the way the founders have set it up, that you're going to be made whole if in the event there are a bunch of defaults and you have to foreclose. So far, over the past 5 years and some change, Csuite has yet to have any loss experienced to investors. They have had a few defaults, but there's many different ways for a loan to go into default and not actually mean losses to the investor. It could be they were late on an interest payment. It could be that the duration of the loan was 10 months, but they're not able to pay it back yet because they weren't able to get the financing they thought they could. So they have to extend the duration, but that kicks in an extra bump to the interest rate because it's beyond the original duration that was agreed upon. So there's a lot of ways that a loan can go into default, but that not actually mean any losses to investors. So I think you got to get yourself comfortable with that. But to me, I think the biggest thing that gave me comfort, besides the technology, I mean, I got to go meet with the founders and look under the hood. I got to meet with them and figure out, what their background was and why I should have a level of comfort investing on the platform. But at the end of the day, the thing I look for the most when I make investments is I'm looking for, one, margin of safety, and two, low to no correlation to other financial assets.
Got it. Okay. We will have to link to Csuite in the show notes. Actually, Gwen, they gave us a free t-shirt at FinCon.
They did give us a free t-shirt. It's a nice one.
It is a nice one, yeah. All right. So any other investments that we haven't mentioned yet that I know you guys have rental properties. Anything else?
We actually just sold our investment condo. So we no longer have any physical investment property. But I am significantly increasing our investment on the Rich Uncles platform, which is a public non-listed REIT in the commercial real estate space that pays a 7% annual dividend paid monthly. And the reason I like that platform is their investment approach and philosophy aligns very well with my risk mitigation first approach to investing. Like I said earlier, I'm always looking for a margin of safety. And what they do is they invest in commercial real estate, but only if they can meet the following criteria. One, it has to be long-term leases that are in place with big, stable, Fortune 500 companies. And they have to be triple net leases, which means that the tenant's actually paying all the property taxes, repairs, and maintenance, and all that kind of stuff. And they have to be able to buy it with 50% down. So they don't leverage to the hilt. So you're not going to get, 25, 30% returns, but you are going to get a consistent 7% annual dividend, and then whatever the appreciation happens to be in that commercial real estate portfolio over time.
And Rich Uncles?
Yeah, Rich Uncles.
How did you find this?
I first found them in May of 2015. It was actually, I was talking with another blogger, and at the time I was looking at realty shares, but then he said, hey, you should check out Rich Uncles because they're right in your backyard. in California, and they were actually in Newport Beach, which is, I was very familiar with the area because I used to live in the Newport Beach, Costa Mesa area. And I met with some of the team there and learned about the platform. The CEO of CD Richard Ellis is actually on the board of directors for Rich Uncles. They have a very tenured team in the commercial real estate space. And I started, dipping my toes. I only put $500 in the platform the first time I found it back in May of 2015. Slowly increased that to 5,000, and I actually just increased my investment to 50,000 yesterday.
Wow.
Wow.
And in terms of kind of having the money to do this, you are crushing it in your career. But one thing is that I think is cool is you and your wife are like a power couple, because it seems that her income has increased a lot too over the past few years.
Absolutely. I mean, she's a rock star in her own regard. And it's cool to see her just crush it in her day job as well. She's in a position of being groomed to take over as the third generation operator of a family business. And so she went to go work for her mom in June of 2013 and started at zero. And she's since built up a book of business that brings in $40,000 a month for the business. That's not her take, but in a relatively short period of time, she's really been rocking it. And it's just been incredible to see her flourish and evolve professionally and, of course, personally as well.
So what do you guys do for fun? Seems like you work hard all the time.
Wait, you mean life isn't about work?
No. I haven't learned that myself.
No. We've probably mastered the work-life blend a little too well. And 2018, the theme is balance. So we're trying to kind of take the pedal off the gas a little bit. It doesn't mean that we're getting soft. We're just trying to put better systems in place and, trying to grind maybe a little less or maybe grind a little smarter. And so what do we do for fun? We like to travel. I guess it's been a year since we've gone anywhere international, but recently we rented a house up in Lake Tahoe. We stayed there for a week. Last summer, we rented a house at the beach in Del Mar for the long Memorial Day weekend. Kind of bordering over the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, we went to St. Thomas for 10 days. So we like to travel. The other thing we love to do is we love food. So, one of the things that probably stands out when people read my income reports that I also share my expenses, at least prior to the last few I did, is we spend, about $2,500 a month on food because we like to go to nice restaurants, and we also like to entertain. We enjoy picking up the tab when we're out with friends for drinks and meals as well. What else do we like to do for fun? We're both avid readers. I haven't really found a way to enjoy fiction. My wife, she finds this balance between reading one fiction book and one nonfiction book. I still haven't found that balance yet, just because there's so much nonfiction stuff I want to read and learn from. I don't know, does that give you a flavor? I mean, we do other things too, but those are the things that come to mind.
Okay, just want to make sure that you weren't like some, robot like the Terminator or something. It just keeps going.
I will tell you that my wife does have to rein me in. I have a tendency to get lost in whatever it is that I'm working on, and I have a very obsessive personality. But she keeps me grounded and reminds me that it's not about the wealth or the money. It's what that money affords you, the optionality it gives you. And, no one wants to be the richest man in the graveyard, so to speak.
That's a great one. So how soon till you hit the 10 mil, and will your life change after that?
Well, I'm hoping tomorrow so that I can just go live a life of leisure. But no, seriously, I'm not really wired to probably ever stop working. But, I said, I think if you have any kind of any bone of ambition, it's going to be hard for anyone to really give up, even if you stop working for, a company. I mean, sounds like you guys are trying to pursue the entrepreneurial route. And so even if you stop working your day job, you guys are still always going to probably do something productive. But what was the question? Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
How soon do you hit 10 million?
Oh, 10 million. Yeah. So I originally set the goal back in the beginning of 2015 and set a 20-year goal, which we are ahead of. So, I set it for the time I set the goal for age 48, which I think was the year 35 or something like that. Right now, our income is at where I projected it to be in like 2033. So our income is way ahead of schedule. And then our net worth is about 3 years ahead of schedule from the original plan. And I think that's only going to increase exponentially. So although I can't give you an exact date, I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than the original 20-year goal.
Very nice. So I went to a Y Combinator event a few weeks ago, and it was pretty awesome. And it definitely got me interested in the startup scene. Now, some of the startup scene was kind of like, it came across as like BS to me, kind of like Silicon Valley style, you know? Like, I don't know if you remember the part in Silicon Valley where the guy who's the CEO of like Salesforce or whatever sits down with him and he's like, or Hooli, and he's like, hey, why are you trying to build a startup just so that you can make it exactly like this current corporation? And do you guys know what I'm talking about or no?
Yeah, no, I'm an avid fan of Silicon Valley.
So whenever I go to the startup stuff, like at first it feels a little bit like that. And then, you know, not to mention the buzzwords like, you know, disruption and all, we're going to go disrupt another industry. But it made me super interested in it. Like maybe someday, you know, we'll have our own company or something. Maybe Gwen, we can make this into a company. I don't know what we would possibly do, but it definitely opened my mind to that. And then when I talk to startup people especially a lot of them who've made a lot of money, they are so driven and so ambitious that the idea of like just stepping away from work, they just don't get it, you know? So it's just kind of interesting to be around people like that too.
Well, they say if you enjoy what you do, you know, you'll never feel like you work a day in your life.
Yeah. And I guess lately I've been a lot better about fitting in exercise, and I wouldn't say I'm over the travel thing, but my husband and I traveled a lot in our 20s. I wouldn't not a lot compared to someone who is a nomad type person. But I mean, anytime we had a vacation, we did international trips and all that. We've done a couple road trips around the US. So I'm kind of like into the whole routine thing and weekend trips right now.
Okay.
So I seem happy with that. I'm content with that. What about you, Gwen?
Oh, I don't even know. My life is so crazy right now. I just am trying to survive.
All right. Final two time?
Final two time. All right, Dom, if people would like to continue this conversation or ask for advice outside of the podcast, how can they reach you?
I think the best place is on the blog at GenYFinanceGuy.com, or they can send me an email at dom@GenYFinanceGuy.com.
Excellent. Last question.
Dom, if you could do anything, have anything in the world, have any power, what would your wildest dream be?
Just to be healthy. Sorry, not healthy. That's a new word. That's the combination of being happy and healthy. But yeah, just to be happy and healthy. I think that's what it's all about. If you can't be happy and healthy, what's the point of being wealthy?
Boom. Put that on a t-shirt.
We can't end on anything better than that.
Thanks, Dom.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Go to our website, firedrillpodcast.com, to continue the discussion and get the link to our private Facebook group.
If you like us, leave us a review on iTunes. If you're like me, you have no idea how to do that. So, in the podcast app or in iTunes, search for Fire Drill Podcast, find it, click the reviews tab, and write something to make my mother proud of me. We read every single review and want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making this podcast possible.